Hey, good morning, everybody. It's me, Robert Phoenix. And yes, we're back for another day of Astro Weather. Are you digging the bolo tie today? Look at that. I want to thank Miss Harriet Bowie for doing a little giveaway ceremony. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And I think it looks pretty good. It's a you know what? I think it kind of works for the whole astrological experience. Like it's a wheel. It's a starry wheel. It's a starry bursting wheel. So anyway, thanks for being here. I hope you're all having a good morning and wherever else you are. My cat is going kind of bonkers over here. What do you got? Oh God, some stupid cat shit. Um, Wherever you are, I hope you're experiencing your life to the fullest, because really that's what we're here to do, at least theoretically. All right, let's get into the Astro Weather. I have a very interesting star of the day today. My cat is acting like a bozo. It's funny. So, some interesting things have occurred in like the last 24 hours with the shifting of the nodes. I'm sure some of you are aware that Jason Aldean released a video yesterday about a small town, basically telling the uh, the the rabble of the inner cities that if you come to a small town, you're not going to get away with this shit. And it's really interesting to see, like, sort of in succession, like the Sound of Freedom on July 4th, still very popular yet controversial, and then you have this song, right? So there's like, you can begin to see the nodes come into play, like, 29 Aries, just come into our town, motherfucker, and we'll show you just how fair things can be in life. I have mixed feelings about the video. Astrologically, I mean, it's a marker, right? We're always looking for temporal markers, and that video is a temporal marker. That video is telling you essentially where we're headed in the trajectory through the true node in Aries. Okay, that is the straight news from the universe. How I feel about the video is I actually live in a small town, and most of the people in this small town are very accomplished hunters. Most of the people where I live are armed to the teeth and would not hesitate to use their firearms very proficiently, by the way, if they needed to. That said, it's almost like taunting. It's almost like an invitation to, hey, you think you're bad? Why don't you come out here to our small town? I'm going to talk more about this on my show today, and talk about the Jason Aldean connection. But that's it. I mean, we're also, this true node in Aries. And I'll tell you what else is really interesting. Somebody over on Twitter, I think it was Roaring Red, brought this up. And Dana Nessel, who is I think the Attorney General for the state of Michigan, part of the coven up there, and she went after these electors from, I think it was from the 2020 election, who were not going to certify the election, right? And then, of course, they were conservative. So she went after them, and she's filed charges against these electors, like seditious. And what's interesting is that Dana Nessel is a 29-degree Aries sun, right? So the true node comes right on her 29-degree Aries sun. And what does she do? She lowers the boom. She gets very proactive, very aggressive, and goes after the people that were not in agreement with the election. So we can see the effect of the true node in Aries. I mean, even on Twitter, following the Draymond Green Jordan Poole saga, like it just became volcanic again, and Draymond Green kind of justifying why he punched Jordan Poole, and that's all 29 Aries, right? So get ready. It's going to be very, very hard to be neutral over the course of the next 19 months. That's the South Node in Libra. Libra wants to be neutral and fair and balanced. It's like the true node in Aries, pick a side. It's really what it's going to come down to, right? Oh, my nose is running. I apologize for that. I have a runny nose in the morning sometimes. You know what I need? I need like a kerchief. Give me 1 second here. Pocket kerchief. Okay. All right. So that's just the true node in Aries. And things are going to get hot. I mean, clearly they're hot physically, but they're just going to get hot, and it's going to be really hard to be neutral. You have to be drawn into one side or the other side of an argument. It's going to be just get ready. Right? I mean, I think there are things that you could and should do during this true node in Aries. I think you should learn how to take care of yourself. You should do lickety split, whatever means are available to you. You know, if you're a woman, maybe you want to take some self-defense courses that involve things like mace or a taser or whatever, right? Like that's really the user-friendly version. You know, there's a more intense, you know, Aries-like approach, and I think you know, it's incumbent upon us to be able to, you know, be stewards and guardians of things that we cherish, like our own personal property. It's a big deal. And you're going to see more and more of this happen over the true node in Aries. So Jason Aldean, thank you for putting a target on small towns across rural. You know, people are going to go, oh, gee, yeah, I'm not going to go there. Could see what would happen. Well, thanks for letting us know, Jason. I'm going to talk more about that in my show. I'm sorry. I'm blowing content here. Anyway, so Sun 27 Cancer. So we're getting into those degrees where it's kind of wonky. 27 and 28. You're at the end of the sign. And so the qualities of the sign are exacerbated, right? So when you go into exacerbation of Cancer, you get the exacerbation of all the Cancerian traits that can be good and reasonable and nurturing and healing and protecting and loyal. Like they go off the rails. You know, 27, 28, when you'll see today with our star of the day, who really encapsulates that. It's because of the chart too, but goes off the rails. Right? Like 27, 28, you're dealing with like Munchausen syndrome. You know, like the mother in whatchamacallit, I See Dead People, you know, feeding her daughter poison, right? Slowly over time. The seventh, whatchamacallit. Anyway, that's where we are at these final degrees of Cancer. It's like, it's so over the top in terms of clingy and uber protecting and uber sensitive, you know. And we're in the Pisces decan here, and you know, Pisces has octaves, and there's a high octave of Pisces, and you know, you're blissed out, and you know, you're hanging out with the avatars on the seventh dimension of your soul, right? I mean, that's like the highest octave of Pisces. But Pisces also swings to the bottom. And, you know, one of the things that that bottom octave can represent is sort of this mass consciousness, or this collective feeling, right? Because that's what Pisces will do. It's a very collective sign. Like we're in Neptune and Pisces right now. And, we're sort of again at the end of that, and it feels like people are waking up from a spell, through this kind of and for Pisces, it's in the Scorpio decan. But the other thing too is that Pisces loves what? Martyrs, right? Martyrs are associated with Pisces. And so when we get to 27 and 28 Cancer, we see a heightened degree of martyrdom. Like, I'm going to throw myself in, I'm going to glue my hands to the tarmac for climate change, which people have done, and they're losing their fingers, by the way. But that's where we are, like at this degree. And luckily, we do have the Sun-Neptune trine, and they're tight today, 27, 27. So while I meditated on the choleric qualities of Cancer at 27 degrees, with the trine with Neptune, and I said this yesterday, don't sweat the small stuff. Just don't sweat the small stuff. If you're in traffic and somebody cuts you off, right, just stay cool. Stay cool. Would not be surprised if you drive down the road 3.5 miles and that person's pulled over. You just want to stay cool and just kind of, I don't want to say stay in your lane, but stay in a lane that is of your own choosing, right? But you don't have to get caught up in the drama, right? You don't. And there's even, I think, a quality today where, they had Mr. T, and his famous saying was "pity the fool." There's a quality of that today with the Sun-Neptune trine, and you can see clearly what people are doing, and you don't have to personalize it. You don't have to attach to it. And in the words of Mr. T, just pity the fool, right? That's, again, I'm just using kind of a little pop culture reference, but it's like, don't let them get to you. Just don't let people, because there's another option, with the Sun Uranus sextile. There's always the potential for a creative response to something, right? And one of the things that we get sucked into through social media is the immediate response, right? Oh, that motherfucker, he really pissed me off, man. And you get in there and you're going to find like 244 characters that are going to set him and the rest of the world straight. And I would say that's not the approach to take today. It probably should be the approach in general, but that's not the approach to take today. So try to find a different way to kind of express who you are. You think outside the box a little bit, feel outside the box, and don't sweat the small stuff. The sun is moving away from Chiron. That square was much closer about a week ago. So the intense sort of wounding and vulnerability and the things that, kind of rupture our sacred relationship to our family, our community, values, etc. Like that space about a week ago was much more prickly. Now the sun is moving away from that square. It's kind of still in the air, but it's this trine with Neptune is much more predominant. All right, let me zoom in a little bit here so we can have a better view at this crazy conjunction going on down around these parts. So here we go. Mercury, Black Moon Lilith. We have the moon at 27. Leo today squaring Uranus. That's an interesting square, right? It's like all of a sudden people just becoming unmoored and popping off. And yeah, it's a very excitable energy. I mean, I don't necessarily think the moon Uranus square is entirely bad. Maybe if you really want to work something out and you're trying to redecorate your house, why don't you go take out a wall? Take a hammer, go take out a wall that you've been wanting to take out in your house for a while. That would be a good Moon Uranus square. I feel like people are really restless when it comes to emotional expression. I mean, it's going to get just even more, I would say, binary. You're, on, off, in, out, on, off, in, out, black. It's just going to become more binary, and it feels like we've been shoved into these kind of hard binary choices with this background of gray noise, right? Like you have to choose one or the other, but with all this rhetoric and gray noise in the background, it gets really, really difficult. And so, people have been kind of caught in this emotional loop, this emotional time loop, which really hasn't resolved itself since 3/11/2020. And so when we see this Moon Uranus square, it's like people want to bust out. They're tired. They're probably bored to shit with their routines, and there's this wanting to bust out. I would maybe encourage you to think twice about busting out against your mother with the Moon Uranus square and telling your mother all the bad things and what a narcissist she was. You may want to hold off on that a little bit. You may not want to have that conversation today because we are talking fixed signs. So when you act upon two planets that are in a fixed sign alignment, it is really hard. So if you're acting on your emotions, it's really hard to put those pieces back into place. But the other side of it is that if you're in a state of entropy or inertia, that would be a better term. If you're in a state of inertia, a Moon Uranus square might be the medicine that you need, right, to shake yourself out of the emotional doldrums here a little bit. But the other side of it is that there's going to be some very interesting repercussions, let's say, right? So if you're willing to invoke an earthquake and live with the consequences, this could be an interesting aspect to tap into, right? So when we look at the chart, like there's options. Like you can option into the Sun-Neptune triangle. Man, I'll be the bigger person, or this is no skin off my back. And if I react to this, I'm just really playing into this person, and I'm really okay with going up a couple levels. Or you can option out and go into the Moon Uranus square, right? I mean, so the atmosphere gives you options in terms of how you want to respond to life here today, at least. I mean, there's interesting options, and there's a lot going on. Venus is at 28. Leo, and it's coming right into trine to the true node, which is, again, with Venus and Leo, you'll have people stridently like championing Small Town by Jason Aldean. You get that very impassioned sense of things, right? There's a lot of kind of impassioned relating to things that are very Aries like. Last night I was watching Jason Whitlock, and they had a show on Andrew Tate, who to this day I still don't get. I still don't. I mean, on one level I do. I understand like the concept, and I understand that there's a lot of young men who've been told that to bow down and take your Ritalin like a good boy, and all this other shit, right? And so he appeals to them because he's got a very, very different message. But last night it was interesting because on the show you had Bryson Gray, and then you had Royce White, who is an Aries, by the way, and they were heartily defending Andrew Tate, and not due to his morality or immorality, but because they don't believe that he's actually guilty of these charges of trafficking and all the other stuff that has been brought up in Romania. And so I'm bringing it up because, like, they were, okay, we're on one side of this, right? This is what I'm talking about with the true node in Aries. We're on one side of this. Yeah, he may be a complete degenerate, and he might be going to hell, but he's probably not guilty, right? And so it was a very impassioned kind of engagement. And so that's where we are with Venus and Leo. But I tell you, when this retrograde happens with Venus and Leo, I think people are going to go into some kind of internal dialogue in some ways. Because the one thing that I could see through this retrograde is like passionately identifying with something. Because remember, the South Node is in Libra, Venus being the ruling planet. And I feel like during the retrograde, some of the mistakes people will make is doubling down and tripling down, with their relationship to the thing that they just feel so strongly about. And it's like, you better, here, the best thing to do with the Venus retrograde as it begins to move away from the true node is to, if you make a mistake, say, man, I was really bought in here. And then you see information, or you get more narrative or background. Like with a retrograde, you can actually use that energy to say, you know what, I got this wrong. I got it wrong. I was passionately defending this person, and some new things came to light, and I have to admit I was wrong here, which is, fire signs don't like to admit they're wrong. They just don't. Aries don't like to admit they're wrong through their actions. They don't want to apologize for it. Leos don't like to admit they're wrong in terms of their expression of who they are. Sagittarians clearly don't want to admit they're wrong if it's connected to their ideas and their philosophy. That's the last thing they want to do, right? So fire signs have a built-in firewall for admitting that they're wrong in their various applications of who they are. But with the Venus retrograde, I think it's not out of a position of weakness. Now, the other thing here is it's also kind of moving backwards, and we're re-examining our passions and what we're passionate about. And the challenge with our world today, and I look, I got my right hand up here, is that it's very easy to get caught in a routine and a loop. For some people, it's just about survival, right? Like some people just have to do the same thing every day, 2 to 3 jobs a day, right? They have to. They can't really, to some degree, get out of it, right? Like I think they could ultimately if they wanted to rearrange things in their lives, but most people don't want to do that, can't do that. But also, like myself, like I'm here doing this 3 days a week, my 15 minutes of flame 3 days a week, the Friday show, Sunday night show. So I am in this cycle, right? So why I'm in the cycle? Well, I'm in the cycle because I enjoy doing it. I mean, that's at the top of the pyramid. But there's another part of this where it's like, if you're a content creator and you're not creating content, somebody else is creating content. And that's part of what I'm talking about. So whether or not, and trust me, this is not like working 2 or 3 jobs at a burger, Dairy Queen and the Mini Mart, right? It's not like that. I do this because I love doing it, right? And at the same time, I also know that there are other people that are doing this. If you're a content creator, you're fully aware of it. And so what does that cause you to do as a content creator? It causes you to focus intensely on creating content and finding new things and fresh things. And when that happens, there's very little time for self-reflection, creative loafing, dreaming, right? Because if those are really important aspects of the creative process. The downtime is almost as important as the uptime. And so with Venus retrograde here, right? If you're in a loop, it's inviting you in some ways to step back a little bit and maybe re-examine your relationship to the things that you're passionate about. And at the end of the day, let's say you go, oh, well, I just really love this. And now I know why I do what I do. And I'm going to get back into it. And Venus goes direct, and like you're up and running. This is a useful potential for Venus retrograde. Or you may say, you know what? I don't miss it. I don't miss this thing. And that's valid. And then when Venus moves direct, you're building a relationship moving forward to something you do feel passionate about. I think it's really hard because we're in a just absolutely instant gratification now world, right? Like you could go on YouTube and cruise through YouTube and get now, when the majority of us, not the totality of us, but when the majority of us were growing up, if you wanted like another Sanford and Son, you had to wait till next week, right? You had to wait. And so along the way, you would check out other things. Well, what else do we have? What else do we have? Now everything is pretty much on demand. And that in and of itself provides this kind of existential sort of angst, right? Like, if you're a content creator, I defy you to tell me that you're not conscious of what other people are doing. You may not be totally conscious of their work, right? But somewhere in the back of your brain, there's that saying from George Soros, if I don't do it, somebody else will, right? So that's part of, I'm just giving you the spectrum of the loop that a lot of us have been habituated into. I'm giving you my perspective or my side of the loop, right? So Venus retrograde says step away a little bit. It's not the end of the world. And because it's in a fixed sign, you feel like it might be. But I don't think that's really the case. So for me, I'm actually taking tomorrow off and I'm taking Sunday off. So we won't have a Friday forecast. We won't have Sunday Night Astro Live because I'm going to have a little Venus retrograde in practice action here, so I can get some creative juices and influences in a different kind of way. Yeah, I recommend that if you can. And look, whatever you're supposed to do, if it's right, whether it's a relationship or your relationship to what you're creative or passionate about, if it's right, when Venus goes direct, it'll be there. And if it's not right, it won't be there. And then you can reestablish a new relationship to it. And that's okay. Because here's another challenging kind of thing with our world. We get it in with this Pluto in Capricorn, going back to the final Pluto return in the United States, is that everything through this binary expression, it's so weird. It's like we've been moved into this strange, it's like, okay. They took binary out of gender, right? And they threw it out there and said, there's no such thing as binary, right? So in terms of identity, the whole like binary off on thing is gone theoretically. But in terms of political positions, it's all become very binary, right? Everything has this weird juxtaposition. And, you're either with us or against us. You're either a racist or you're not. I mean, on the political level, clearly binary, right? Left, right, forced into these camps. But on this other level, oh man, there's so many gradations of your identity. It's enough to make you fucking mad. Drive you crazy. And by the way, that's intentional. It's called social engineering. Yeah, I mean, today with Venus in this yod, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I think dependencies are under the microscope. Your dependencies are under the microscope. Everybody's is. Very interesting. Very, very interesting yod. The moon catches up very quickly here. By the time we hit the afternoon, high noon here in Central Texas, that moon Venus conjunction, muy caliente, hot. So next couple hours, you may want to check yourself. But again, sometimes shit happens. I was talking about so when I have clients, one of the things I get into sometimes with one of my readings is numerology, and the difference between the 3 and the 5 in numerology. The 3 is very much like Gemini, like wants lots of experiences, dabbles in this, dabbles in that, but there's at times a sense that the 3 is like the social butterfly. It just lands long enough to get a taste and then it moves on, right? That's the style of the 3. The 5 does the same thing, but the difference is that the 5 is equally open to fantastic states of self-actualization, ecstasy, and bliss, as well as being open to other experiences that may not be as stellar, sterling, or feel so good, right? That's the difference between the two. They're both actualizing through experience, but one is going to be more selective because they want their experiences to be fun, right? Whereas the 5 says, just bring it, I'll take it. I'll take the experience, whatever the experience is. And I have no idea why I'm saying this right now, but no, I do. It has to do with the moon Venus conjunction and the overall architecture of like today's chart. And that if you go down a certain path, try not to be too judgmental. And let's say you blow your cool. Try not to be too judgmental. Try not to say, oh, I fucked up. Robert said, well, there is a Sun-Neptune trine, and I had that opportunity. Well, maybe you did, right? But try not to judge what happens to you too quickly, because there's a lot of times what'll happen is that if you give things enough time, a couple things will occur. Number one, you'll see your own participation in it more clearly versus like just reacting really quickly. And number two, there can be more details that get filled in from other spaces. And then you can begin to kind of understand maybe what's happened in I'll use the word holistic, in a more holistic way, right? So don't trip. If you do trip, pick yourself back up and just learn from it. All right, let's talk about the star of the day. And thank you for being here, by the way. I wish I may actually talk more about him also on the show following this one. And it's because there's some other things that I've discovered about him and his progeny that I think are really worth talking about. So yeah, Jason Aldean, I'm going to get into that more. And you're looking at one of the most influential people of the 20th century. And it's interesting that today is his birthday, right? As we get to the end of Cancer, and Frantz Fanon was from Martinique. Yesterday was Herbert Marcuse's birthday. So these are like two fathers of the revolution. You know, through Marcuse, we get critical theory. We get critical theory, and we get what's called social Marxism. Fanon is clearly a Marxist, right? The reason he's a Marxist is because the whole idea of decolonization comes from Frantz Fanon. And so colonization is connected to capitalism. So you have to get rid of the colonizers, right? So once that's done, then you have to have another system in place. So it's the system that is anti-colonization, which in this case would be socialism or communism or some kind of centralized governing body, right? Now, Fanon is the author of a couple of different books. His most famous book was it Blackface, White Mask? Let's see, what is this book? Black Skin, White Mask, and then The Wretched of the Earth. And his background is that he was a psychiatrist, a trained psychiatrist, excuse me, who studied in France, and he was working in Algeria. And, you know, the Algerians and the French had a little bit of a tussle in the late 1950s and 60s. And Fanon's ideologies, along with some other very, very pointed, like regime change ideologies that they use in places like Cuba, Vietnam, China, same deal in Algeria. Okay. So, but Fanon brings violence to the equation. Like, he is not above this idea that if we have to completely eradicate the colonizers, then that's the way it's got to be, right? The title of the book is The Wretched of the Earth. And he is fueled by this idea that Blacks had been so demoralized by colonization that they had to regain their pride, and they had to regain their national racial, well, I would say racial identity more than national identity. They had to regain their racial identity. He actually influenced this other guy, Steve Biko. Biko's more interesting than Fanon. One of these days I'll do a show on Biko. There's a reason why he was killed. It wasn't because he was Frantz Fanon. Steve Biko did the interesting thing about, I'm digressing a bit, but the interesting thing about Biko is that he didn't want any kind of retribution to the white apartheid state. He was like, look, we just got to change this thing. And if we have to be separatist, that's the way it's going to be. But we're not going to hold any kind of a grudge against these people. Right. So he was interesting. And it's like, no, you want somebody who's going to hold a grudge against it, because that's what keeps people in eternal flames. Fanon is that guy. And he really influences a very key and central figure in our recent historical memory, and that is Barack Obama. Frantz Fanon is Barack Obama's philosophical, ideological, and spiritual teacher. And Obama has even mentioned Fanon. He won't say it a lot, but he's not the only one, right? Fanon is kind of crazy, by the way. Like his ideas are some of the, like he's like a melanated Hitler to some extent. That's how extreme he is. And you can see it in his chart. Like, his chart is just filled with extremes. He's got the Sun in Cancer on the ascendant. So he's a force, right? Anybody that's got the Sun on the ascendant is a force. But at that degree, right, 27 degrees, 29 Cancer, you know, you get into A lot of feelings there. There's a lot of feelings. So I would say he's a sensitive individual, regardless of what I think of him philosophically or politically. But the 12th house here, like he's got this balsamic moon. And the idea of the balsamic moon is to let go of things. But the Cancer balsamic moon is the hardest. I would say maybe that in the Scorpio balsamic moon, to let go, right? To dissipate. And he's got Pluto here. So it's not going to be easy to let go. Like he is going to have deep, deep memory. Right. So and I think he would have collective memory. So when he brings up like his own personal experiences around being colonized, it's not just him. This is why he was so powerful. And by the way, I am not advocating the work of Frantz Fanon. I'm just giving you the astrological roadmap here. Like this is where it's coming from. Like he's able to collectively feel something that other people are responding to. And he's able to act on it. Not only that, but here we go. True node in Leo in the first house, Mars in Leo in the first house, Venus, wide conjunction to Mars, Neptune. The guy's loaded with Leo. So what did we just talk about earlier on? Action. He's got a two-pronged assault. He's got what's going on behind the scenes, with his emotions, with his ability to connect into the collective for better or worse. And then once he fulminates all of this, then he acts on it, right? It's a very kind of singular approach. The other thing too is the guy worked in psychiatric hospitals, which is very 12th house. He's got an issue with authority, clearly, right? Mars Saturn square. Anytime you get a Mars Saturn square, you got an issue with authority, right? Saturn's authority. And he's got Saturn Scorpio. This is not a guy who can let things go. Remember I talked about the whole fixed thing? This is not a guy that's going to let things go. And even when you're coming from a collective space, which I really think he is, his Saturn in his chart becomes the colonizer, right? He sees the influence of Saturn on like local communities, traditions, cultures, tribes, things like that. This is what happens, right? When you get a chart that I think is much more collective, which I believe it is, the rest of the chart begins to take on those characteristics. It's not just his Saturn, right? The Saturn becomes the colonizer. And over here we have Uranus in Pisces, and he's radical. He has no bones about being. He's okay with his radicalism. Sun Uranus trine, and Uranus is ingressed into the ninth house, so it's radical ideology, which is what the ninth house is. And he's got Chiron right there, right on his midheaven in Aries, and he's acting. Again, he's acting out this idea of recapturing like the will of his people with Chiron and Aries on the midheaven. It's a very interesting chart. You can see it. You can see the guy in the chart, highly imbalanced. And Jupiter and Capricorn. It's interesting because I've often thought this about people like Haile Selassie, right? Haile Selassie was educated by the West. He was educated by the West. He spent time in England, and Haile Selassie hung out with the British elites and the Fabian Society and all these people. Pol Pot was educated in Paris. Where do you think Frantz Fanon got his? So it's weird, right? Like these people who want to destroy the system were actually educated by the system. It's a funny little twist there on the whole thing. And I can see that with his Jupiter in Capricorn and the retrograde, right? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, but no thanks. You gave me the intellectual tools, and now I can use those tools to burn your society down. Thank you very much. Anyway, interesting character. I'm going to talk more about him. Just an incredibly imbalanced chart. And when you get into those conjunctions, man, and they're really close, very hard to be predictable with how the individual is going. By the way, I think he's probably bisexual too, even though he had a daughter, which I'll talk about on the show. All right, let's get out of here because I gotta go to 15 minutes, a little bit long today. But thanks for being here, and always appreciate the 1.3K people that show up here every day. Those are my stats every day. 1.3K, 1.3K, 1.3K. Right? Oh, am I gonna get paranoid? I'm gonna turn that into a 13. Bring it on. Bring on the 13. Hey, bring on the 14 or the 15 or the 16. See, I'm practicing a little bit of the five strategy. Have a great day. Enjoy yourself and figure out which road you want to take. Right? They're there. And if you take the wrong one, just wait. Don't judge yourself. Let things sort of settle out a little bit. You might learn something. What else? Oh, yeah. True Hemp Science. Go visit them, truehempscience.com, and type in 15MINS, and you will get free goodies. Free goodies with your order of $100 or more. And if you spend $150, you get free shipping, and you get a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you don't like that CBD, if you don't like the moon dust, if you don't like the gummies, as long as you get it back there within 30 days, you get your money back. That's good old American style business, right? All right. That's it. Thanks for being here. Wherever you are in your day on this realm, make it yours. Bye for now.